This is just going to be my opinion on the 4 most important champions in the coming Overwatch season. And I know the current season, season 4, is about to be over in about 3 days. But I wanted to give my opinion on who I think the 4 most important champions to both watch and maybe even to play if some of the things that I will talk about in this video happen. Now, first on the list will be Winston. Winston has gotten buffed, and Reinhardt has also gotten nerfed in the last season, in the sense that Reinhardt's nerf came like a couple of weeks ago with his Earth Shatter being a little bit weaker, which I have no idea why Blizzard made him weaker, but a direct buff, a direct nerf to Reinhardt is an indirect buff to Winston. Because Winston is already he kind of got buffed, but it was more along the lines of a quality of life type of change to his barrier, in the sense that when he places it down, it starts the cooldown, whereas it used to not start the cooldown, and if you place the barrier, you would have to wait for the barrier to be destroyed for it to actually go on cooldown. And that was more of a quality of life change. The point is, Winston hasn't really been touched yet. Really, Roadhog and Zarya, they can't really create their own meta and their own team comp. Like, for instance, you build a team comp around a Zarya you build the dive comp around Winston. You know, Winston can dive, he can place his barrier, Tracer, Genji. You know, you have a soldier to protect your backline, and he's just a really great damage dealer overall. You can build a team comp around Winston and have him be your focus of the specific team comp. Whereas Zarya and Roadhog, they aren't necessarily like the focus of your team comp per se, if that kind of makes sense. Because even like I guess the team comp you would build for Roadhog, for example, would be, you know, a traditional would be like a 3 tank type of comp. But the whole premise of that specific team comp isn't necessarily centered around the Roadhog. It's centered around the Reinhardt. It's centered around the Soldier. It's centered around the D.Va. Roadhog is kind of just a really good pick to complement the team comp. But I think with no changes to Reinhardt that make him a little bit weaker, no changes to Winston, I think Winston is a pretty important champion to watch, even though I absolutely hate him as a champion. Now, you also have McCree being the second champion, and the reason why I say McCree is going to be, you know, a champion to watch, it's for the simplicity of the fact is that he can two-shot you as a champion. I think that Pharah will hopefully be nerfed. I'm kind of holding out hope for her, and this is kind of why she won't be necessarily in this list, is because she's already a really strong champion with a really great kit, and it's on top of that, it's that she already does an insane amount of damage, and her kit also flows with that damage. McCree does an insane amount of damage and has an insane amount of burst in his kit, but the problem is that he, unlike Pharah, doesn't have a kit that works. If they do a rework with McCree, where they keep that same premise of, okay, be really accurate with McCree, but now we're going to have a kit that benefits that style of play, I think we could see a really, really strong DPS in that specific meta and in the current or the next season. And that would be McCree. I think McCree would actually probably be the better DPS if Flashbang can kind of coincide with his kit. I think that they may need to keep Flashbang and extend the range and maybe try and do something with the roll or something like that. Maybe he actually maybe it's easier to hit his shots, but I don't really know what the changes are. I personally think that he needs a complete rework, but if they do give him a really, really good rework, and if they keep that premise of the 2-shot that can delete squishies, I think McCree could be a very strong champion next season. And then you have the third champion, which is Doomfist. Now, the reason why Doomfist, a champion that I know nothing about when it comes to information, why he's on this list, if I think Doomfist is more along the lines going to be his code name. I personally think Doomfist will be the next champion. I think that he will be a tank. Now, the reason why I think Doomfist is going to be a very important champion to watch is because Doomfist, and even not even Doomfist as a champion, but tanks, there's such a really weird kind of flow with tanks. Like, what was last season's two strongest tanks? D.Va and Reinhardt. What's this season's somewhat strongest tank? Winston. And Winston, by the way, is a pretty weak tank, as tanks go. Really, Zarya and Roadhog are kind of complementary. They're kind of like in an okay spot, but you would never really focus, again, your team comp around a Zarya and a Roadhog. They're more along the lines going to be complementary. So I feel like if Doomfist, is created, and if he's announced, and if he's shown off as a really, really strong tank, I think we could see more of Doomfist more and more often, because Orisa was kind of a bust. And I personally not only think, but I feel like Doomfist would be a really, really strong champion in the current meta, because there's just this gap there's this just disgusting play that happens with Winston every single time you play Winston. It's just every single time I personally see a Winston, I kind of want to cringe because of how bad his specific playstyle is. But I feel like because his playstyle is so bad, and because all of the other tanks that were strong in recent seasons got nerfed in one way, even Roadhog technically got a nerf. Maybe Zarya was like the only one that hasn't really changed, but some way, shape, or form, a tank has been nerfed, except for Winston. He actually got buffed. So I do feel like Doomfist as a champion has room to come in and really, swipe the rug out of Winston's legs and become, this top tier tank that we really haven't seen before. That's kind of what I'm hoping for, because I do not like Winston. The fourth and final champion on my specific list has got to be Ana. Ana, and it's simply put, her nano boost. We've seen the nano boost change a lot. Like we saw, the Beyblade Reaper. We saw kind of, the charge on the Reinhardt, the nano boost on the Reinhardt. And now we kind of see DPS is getting it more and more and more, because their ults are a lot more powerful when it comes to damage than most tanks or more supports. So obviously you want the damage dealers to get the nano because they deal more damage. They also take a reduced amount of damage, so you want to give it on them. And I'm very interested to see, because really, again, Ana's a significant player in Overwatch. Ana's a significant champion when it comes to the game and to team comps. Like, usually you would see really, really high level teams taking Ana, not because of her healing specifically, but because of her nano boost. Like, you would say, oh, okay, I may have a Mercy on my team, I may have a Zenyatta, I may have a Lucio, but really, Ana's ult is the most game-changing thing ever. A lot of people, I would say, think that the nano boost is like one of the most complementary ults to really any champion, and I think that that's the case. I think Ana's ult could really, really, really either take a hit this season, or it could remain the same, and we could still see Ana really being embedded in team comps, because a lot of people love nano boost. I love nano boost especially, but if nano boost doesn't change whatsoever and they don't introduce a new champion in the next couple of seasons, I personally think that Ana will still be one of the best, if not the best, supports in the game, because specifically of her ult. If it does change, we'll see what the changes are. But I would bet that Blizzard would strike out the damage reduction, because, they want to make targets a little bit more easier to kill. Because, the offensive stats, it would kind of be like, well, nano boost is kind of useless if you take off the offensive stats, but they want to get rid of the defensive stats, like the damage reduction, so that way it's easier to kill you, and you're not necessarily semi-tanky in the sense that you have some defensive stats. When she ults a Genji, he becomes so much more powerful because he has the damage reduction, as well as the Dragon Blade, as well as the damage increase with his ult. So he becomes this monster of a champion because he has defensive stats as well as significant offensive stats. And I think that Blizzard will try and take a look, if not, they are already looking at ways to maybe balance out Nano Boost if some of the changes I think personally happen on the list, like McCree getting buffed, like Winston kind of maybe getting nerfed, or Doomfist coming in and just slapping Winston across the face and saying, no, 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 this is my meta now. This is my game now. Bye, Winston, this is my game. I feel like if one of the 3 champions either gets nerfed or gets buffed, specifically if Winston gets nerfed, if McCree gets buffed, and if Doomfist comes in and he's really strong, we may see a hit towards Ana, because that Nano Boost will still be one of the primary things that you see in team comps. This has been 24. Remember to like, comment, favorite, and subscribe for more. I hope you kind of like some of the Overwatch content that I'm bringing with you. I know the season's almost over. I know that it's kind of, I've been talking about Overwatch really for the past couple of days. I'll try and talk about something else tomorrow. Until then, have a fantastic day. I'll see you next time.